Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another update. So in today's update, we are going to be taking a trip through memory lane once again, because today's update, I really just want to talk about what's been going on in the world of unemployment. The really big, I guess just general news in general, you can even say breaking news depending on how you see it, is that President Joe Biden has now officially just come out to speak once again all about unemployment. So this part of the story is not even something that comes from a news article, but it's something that comes exactly directly from Joe Biden himself, so we know it's as official as it can be. So in today's update, I pretty much just want to talk about what Joe Biden just said when it comes to the world of unemployment. I want to just talk about how unemployment is doing in our country just collectively in general, and maybe just some general important, insightful information to just know, because it has been a little bit of a while. So as always, we're gonna get right to it, but as always, real fast, before we begin, consider smashing the like button, because at least we finally do have new information, so I think that's relatively exciting. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell as we hopefully get more information. And as always, feel free to comment any questions or personal thoughts about honestly just really anything. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So the big breaking news story to what's happening is that President Joe Biden has now officially released a statement about unemployment. We will probably try to talk about this very objectively, so you guys can decide whether this is a good or not so good thing, because it is a little bit of a gray, vague area right now, and whether this is a good thing or not good thing probably just depends on you guys, so feel free to share any opinions. But this pretty much comes directly from the official White House website, so you can know it's as official as it can be. And the big idea is that President Joe Biden, in his brand new statement, he pretty much just spoke about how unemployment is doing in our country. The big summary is that he basically just has shared that we now officially have one of the lowest unemployment rates that we've experienced in over 52 years. So the last time we had unemployment rate at the numbers that we currently have today, was pretty much way back in 1969. And he basically has spoken about the progress of that he's made with unemployment, how ever since he took office, unemployment essentially went from 20 million people unemployed to only about 1.3 million people right now collecting unemployment. They've also added that the new information is that supposedly they've also added as well 8 million jobs. So in other words, in his specific direct words, and you can read it right here, but I'll read it with you guys just because I know some people like to listen to this as a podcast behind the scenes, so they might not be looking at the screen. Of course, you know, some people, maybe they do actually want to look at some interesting movement and all that. But the big idea is, in his own words, he pretty much just stated about how he's made a lot of progress for this country. There is no accident, and all of this was essentially a direct result of his great economic plan to rebuild our country. And so his next plans are going to be trying to combat and solve everything related to essentially inflation, the budget deficit, and then also about taxes, trying to tax the wealthy. So those are pretty much the three areas that he's really going to try to focus on next, now that he's dealt a lot with unemployment. Now, obviously, you know, there's a lot of people that have very mixed opinions. Are these numbers accurate? Because keep in mind is that there's a lot of people that are unemployed but are not in the unemployment numbers because they fell out of unemployment. And there's also a lot of people that are maybe unemployed, but because of situations, they might not be actively looking for work, because keep in mind, to be considered unemployed, you either have to be obviously collecting unemployment, or someone at the very least that is somewhat actively trying to at least look for work. So that's just something maybe important to know about the definition of what they define as unemployment. Of course, this is something for maybe you guys to feel free to share your personal thoughts, but that is just objectively what President Biden has now officially shared in his most recent statement. So this is probably going to be relevant, certainly obviously on release date, certainly for pretty much the rest of May 2022. And I'd say this is probably going to be relevant information even for most of June 2022, because at this point, as most of you guys know, we only talk about unemployment there and there, and a huge reason is because he only speaks about unemployment there and there, but we at least finally have some information to at least just bring out there. Now, the next thing that I really want to talk about maybe is just about how our country is doing with unemployment and just everything economically in just general. So the big idea is that there were a lot of news articles that have now officially come out to talk about things like the GDP, how we're doing economically. You guys probably know about the recession that might potentially, or some people actually even claim is already pretty much going on, depending on who you ask. But this article essentially just talks about the most recent economic report, really stating about the fact that recently we officially have the new GDP numbers, and it actually fell by about 1.5%. So maybe as a perspective about what this number physically means, long story short, all you have to know is that it was actually even worse than they actually expected. Typically, the idea is that you actually want to see GDP go up, so you want to see a positive number. If it is a negative number, because it obviously fell, that is obviously not so good. They originally anticipated that it was going to fall by probably about like a 0.5 something percent, but it actually fell by 1.5%. And so because of this number, many people believe that as we're currently seeing all of the GDP decreasing, you guys might have seen a lot of other videos about it. We will probably make another future video that really focuses in about it. But the big idea is that the foresight right now is that many people believe that a recession is going to come soon. And this is going to be something that's very impactful for pretty much almost every single person here, regardless of whether you're in a financially tight situation, because obviously they're going to be impacted by this. But actually a lot of rich people are going to be impacted by this, because it also means that even for a lot of rich people, investments, stock market, housing, crypto, everything in that world is going to be impacted. It also means that potentially, if you guys recall back in the 2008 and 2009 era, feel free to share any stories if you guys have any, that this was also during the era when a lot of people also lost their jobs. So while it is true that, and I guess this goes back to the unemployment side, that while it is absolutely true that right now, at least according to what they've reported, that we are starting to see a massive decline in unemployment, it is also believed by many people that we might also see a reversal where it might even go up again if we really do end up entering into a recession. This is even more true because many companies are now already announcing potential layoffs or downgrading the number of people that they're going to be hiring. Of course, this is probably something that I really want to maybe talk about in a future video, so maybe consider subscribing if you guys haven't done so already, because I think it's a little bit more detailed than that. But the big idea is that there's a lot of stuff happening and it is not moving in the right direction that I think most people would want it to be moved in. The specific unemployment numbers I believe that they released was that essentially 210,000 people filed for unemployment in the most recent week. So this is actually down by about 8,000 from the previous week. But really honestly at this point, if you've been really tracing the unemployment numbers for pretty much the last month or two, it's been pretty consistently been moving at about 200,000 people filing for unemployment every single week. So this is definitely very different, because if you guys remember at the peak of the pandemic 2 years ago, huge shout out and huge love if you guys have been here for a while, because you guys are amazing. But the big idea is that at the very peak, we saw probably about like a little bit over 1 million people file every single week. And in fact, the first couple of weeks that we went into unemployment, there were probably about over 20 million people that were filing for unemployment. So this was a very massive difference, and we've literally gone from 20 million to just about 200,000. So that is a very big difference. But I think the idea is at the end of the day, it is still obviously a lot of people. Now, in terms of talking about what this really might mean for unemployment programs, just in a very general perspective, the big idea right now, and one of the biggest reasons we haven't really talked as much about unemployment lately, is just because there hasn't been as many big breaking news until maybe, a little bit of today, because we now have a statement. But the big idea is that there are not necessarily plans, sadly, to do unemployment benefits. There may be a potential resurfacing to do unemployment benefits if we really do end up going into the recession. Of course, this is something that not a lot of people are talking about yet, and I think a huge reason why is just because it hasn't physically happened yet, and aside from the fact that this just happens to obviously be a more biased unemployment finance focused channel, so obviously, it makes sense that we would try to bring it up. But the big idea is that the more probable thing that's happening right now with unemployment benefits is that even though there is not necessarily a thing going on a very federal national level, what is actually interestingly happening is that there are indeed actually very, very similar to what's been happening with the fourth stimulus checks. There are several states that have very, very subtle plans of trying to do something related to unemployment. Now, within this particular plan, some of it has to do with increasing unemployment, some of it has to do with extending unemployment, but a lot of it also can potentially have to do with much more about reforming unemployment. So what this essentially means is that it does have to do with unemployment benefits, but not necessarily to increase the benefits per se, but much more about just improving the actual unemployment systems. So things like this could be, for example, making it so that it's a smoother process, so that it's faster, so that it's easier to get on unemployment, so that maybe the whole procedure, the customer service line, the phones, everything related to that is a much more smoother and better procedure and process and experience. Of course, there are definitely states that are, thinking about potentially doing something related to more benefits, but that is just something that all of this is really what we have to kind of just see what states ultimately end up deciding. But that's really the big thing to really share in today's update. So with that being said, that's pretty much what I really wanted to share in today's update, to maybe give a huge update about what's been happening with unemployment, especially now that we do have official words from Biden himself, Congress, and of course a lot of stuff. But of course, as always, if you guys made it this far, thank you guys so much for watching at the end. Consider smashing the like button if you guys haven't done so. Consider subscribing, especially as we get more information. I think potentially one of the future videos is probably going to be about the recession, and there's probably going to be something else also talking about unemployment in the future just in general. So again, definitely subscribe for that if you guys haven't done so. But as always, of course, consider, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts, and if you guys are watching this on release date, have an amazing, great, happy Memorial Day, and hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.